right, let's pray and we'll get started. Father, thank you for your grace and mercy again today, for allowing us to live another day. Thank you for choosing us and promising your divine direction in everything we do. And I pray for these students as they're thinking about summer and the semester stuff, and I pray for your direction, for your strength to be sufficient for each one. And most of all, we would see the face of God in everything we do and desire to honor him. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, let's get the right one up here. Okay, so sub-Saharan African culture. Tribal leadership is really important. Okay? When we think of the word, when I say the word family, what comes to your mind? Don't overthink it. Mom and dad and the kids, right? Maybe the dog. You know. And so what do we call that? What kind of a family is that? Nuclear family, right. In sub-Saharan Africa, there is such a thing as a nuclear family as we define it, but the concept of the family is much, much broader than that, as it is in most of the rest of the world. So in a tribe, yes, you do have a mom and dad, you do have brothers and sisters, but the others who are members of the tribe are part of family as well. So do you remember that statement in Revelation? Around the throne are people from, and what are the designations that he uses? Who's meeting around the throne in Revelation 4 and 5? Tribe, tongue, kindred, nation, yeah. Language. Lots of words are used to describe relationships among people. And the one that, it's interesting, we refer to nations a lot when we're trying to describe collections of people. And nations are included there. But the word, as you know, the word that's predominantly used for nations in the New Testament is probably better translated what would be, it's actually a transliteration of the Greek word. What would it be? Ethnicities, right. Now, an ethnicity would be bigger than a tribe, okay, by and large, although even that might vary somewhat. Tribes are very important. They're very powerful. Many tribes have their own sets of gods, okay? Ancestors oversee and interact with tribes, which is part of the reason, at least, why when you hear about civil war in sub-Saharan Africa, many times it's tribal warfare, right? Have there been national conflicts? Yes, there have, okay? But tribal warfare is very important. And so tribal leadership. Witch doctor, medicine man, what's another word that maybe you've heard that would describe this type of person?
Possibly
a chief. Okay, now help me out, Paul. I envision a tribe as containing a chief who is the leader, but also a medicine man or witch doctor that works alongside him. But are they sometimes one and the same?
They can be one and the same, but many villages have them separate. But they're connected with the chief of village.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. All right. I was thinking of the word shaman, which is used in some cultures. It's the same. When you think of a witch doctor, medicine man, and shaman, what function comes to your mind? What does that person do?
Future telling, or even possessor who is able to tell what's coming next, or
okay.
There's something wrong in the village.
Okay. And how do they figure that out?
By doing some type of ritual.
Right, which means in that ritual, there's contact with the other side, right? So intercession is a big part of what these guys do. Paul, are you familiar at all? Are you aware of in your region the presence of female witch doctors, or are they always males?
I said mostly male, but the female will be more as an assistant or something like that.
Okay, okay,
Probably his wife.
yeah,
But a lot of times they're single.
okay, okay, good, thanks. I should give you extra credit for all the help you're giving me, but it is very helpful. Yeah, intercession's a big thing. If you think about, if you have a tribe composed of a chief and then also a witch doctor or medicine man, you really have almost the same kind of scenario you have when you think of the tribe of Judah, who would produce the political leader in Israel, and the tribe of Levi, who produces the priesthood. There's almost a correspondence between that idea of political and spiritual. But as Paul said, in some tribes, the chief really does both and, okay? We did a case study this week, I think it was, or last week, in Current Issues about that issue. A guy had become a Christian, and his tribe wanted to elevate him to the position of chief. But in that particular tribe, he would be expected to lead in the rituals of the people. And you know, our conclusion was he would never be able to do that. Okay. Rainmaker, you know, you've all heard that sort of thing. So you have to have contact with the people who can tell you what's going to happen. Those can be evil spirits. They can be good or evil spirits in the minds of the people, and then ancestors, which is a different kind of spirit. Yeah, Paul?
Well, sometimes they're called wise men. That's what they're called sometimes, because they have lived long in the village, and they have seen what happens in the village. So they are able at least to tell the chief, hey, this is what happened last year. It might happen again. If that a flood or rain, he's able to warn them.
Okay, they call them wise men. Now, is that the same thing as a witch doctor, or would that be a separate person?
That'd be like someone who has lived longer in the village, who understands.
Okay.
Like if a young chief was chosen, he would probably pretty much be wanting to be close to the wise men.
Okay. Okay, young chief would be dependent on the wise men. So wise men comes out of the elders, the idea of the group of elders. Okay, interesting. So it's not necessarily the same as a witch doctor. The witch doctor could be, do you know if witch doctors tend to be older as well, or could they be any age?
Pretty much old.
Okay, they're usually older as well. Okay, all right, very interesting. So there is the honor for those who are older, who normally assume those positions. Yeah. Okay, good, thanks. All right. Okay, religion is not abstract, but requires action. Okay, what do we mean when we say, if I refer to religion as something that's abstract, what am I saying about it? What's the opposite of abstract? Concrete. Okay, so what would an abstract religion be? And don't say one that's not concrete. What do we mean by that? Yeah, Emma?
Maybe because it varies a lot, like per village or per, like, it's not like a whole bunch of people across the world focusing on one thing. It's like more like tribal and like unique.
Okay, there is variation. You're right on that account, but that wouldn't be what the word abstract means when we're talking about the nature of religion. You're right. I'm thinking you're seeing the word abstract as something that's not really defined. There's so much variation that makes it kind of abstract that way. That's true, but there's another sense in which this word abstract is being used.
Well, so especially the way Westerners think about Christianity, like we have a lot of doctrine that there's not really any way to visualize, like traditionism, or like, I don't know, like the Trinity, like that's a pretty abstract concept that we can't understand in concrete terms.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this religion, it's more ritualistic and it's more like you can see what you're doing.
Okay. So things that are more visible, obvious, you can see what you're doing. Okay, James?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the abstract had this idea of that you have your life over here, but then religion is just kind of over there, I guess. It doesn't really have that much impact on your life.
Okay, that would be a fruit of abstract religion. It doesn't have the same connection with your life. Yeah. Abstract is the idea of propositional truth, theory, that sort of thing, where you can define terms and things, but they're not necessarily things that you experience, that are part of your day-by-day life. So this is where we have to be really careful as Westerners. When we take the gospel to a place like sub-Saharan Africa, we have to be very careful. We don't walk in with our outlines, our here are the 10 doctrines, with our propositional statements. Those statements are all true, but they don't connect with a sub-Saharan mind in general. Because for them, religion is that which interacts with them on a level they can experience day by day. And I think that's what you guys are all kind of getting at that idea. Does that make sense? So what would you do if you were walking into an African tribe somewhere and you wanted to share with them the truth? Let's just suppose that this tribe has no knowledge at all of the Bible or Jesus Christ. How would you go about launching a presentation of God's truth?
Maybe tell it like a story.
Yeah. Now, would you be out of bounds presenting it as a story? No, because it is a story, right? It's one of the things I keep banging on in this class in theology and missions and other classes. It's a story. It is a narrative. Okay? Narratives contain propositional truths, but let's remember that propositional truth comes out of the narrative and it does not create the narrative. God has chosen to reveal his truth through narrative. So if you walk into a tribe and you tell a story, yeah, you're off on good footing because now you're telling something that we can relate to. And then you're applying. That's what I did in India when I said, let's look around, everybody, see the beautiful trees and the foliage. Where did this all come from? And we tell a story of what happened. Yeah, so that's, and in seminaries, if you establish a Bible school in a country like this, it's okay to have theology books, systematic theology and all that's good stuff. But just make sure that you don't disconnect that from the narrative because concrete theology is theology that affects the way we live. Abstract is more conceptual. Both are good, but don't abandon the one for the other, okay? That makes sense? It's something it takes a lot of study, a lot of consideration. Okay. A bride, we talked about brides a little bit last time, is treated with regard because she is the link between the ancestors and the child created by the gods. Now, there's so many variations in tribes. I would never say that this is true in every tribe, in every situation. But as a general concept, she is the one who provides the link between the ancestors and the gods, the child created by the gods. Paul, I don't know if that's true where you're from, that the tribal idea is that the gods are the one who create the child. Is this idea here resonate with your, it doesn't? Okay, so it's just going to depend. All right. Collectivism obviously is very strong in this cluster, the link among the people. A key word, is this word used where you're from, Ubuntu? Is that a word or not?
What word?
The key word Ubuntu, they're the italicized word?
No.
Okay. Okay. I don't know, maybe the concept is there. It's the idea that I am because we are. In other words, the reason I exist is not for myself. It's not to become everything I can become. The reason I exist is to contribute to the group, okay, which is a concept that we've talked about already. All right? A person is only a person because of interaction with others. If I'm isolated, just living my life, doing my thing, and I'm not part of the group, then it's almost as if I lost my personhood. I am a person. I have value as a person. I have meaning as a person because of my connection with the group. which is a great, I mean, that's a biblical concept in many ways. There's a Zulu proverb that says a person is not a person without other individuals. Okay. Letter D, reciprocity is simply built into everything naturally. Suppress self-interest for the sake of the family and the tribe. Now, I got a question for you here. What do you guys think about the idea of tribal conversions? Would you consider it legitimate? Let's say you went into a tribe and you spent time sharing the story of the Bible, talking to them, and let's say you did that for several months. And they're really beginning to understand the message of the Bible, what God has done. And suddenly, the chief comes up to you and says, we have decided to follow Jesus. What do you say? Ella?
I think if they make all of their other decisions collectively as a group, then why would this be any different? You know, I mean, there might be a few who are true converts, but like that's the way they do things. So I feel like it would be legit.
Okay, so if that's their mode of decision making in general, why should we force an exception when this kind of decision comes about? Okay, all right, good. Paul?
Well, I guess I want to ask a question. Kind of wondering why if they all say to follow Jesus, are they truly wanting to follow Jesus? Or are they truly wanting to reject their ancestors' worship? Because it takes time to change people's beliefs.
Okay, let's just assume, for sake of the analogy here, let's assume that in this presentation of the gospel, it has been made clear that in order to become a follower of Jesus Christ, you have to forsake all the other gods you're worshiping. Let's assume that that's been made clear, following Paul's example on Mars Hill and in Lystra, when his first item of agenda is monotheism. So let's assume that that's true, and so now the chief comes and says, we're ready to do that. We're ready to forsake our gods and follow Jesus. I see another hand over here. One of you guys. Yeah, Jules?
I would just like what Ella said, do it. Because then I feel like if you didn't, it would close off them from the gospel. And also, you might be missing out an opportunity. And there were like times in the Bible where there was like multiple conversions from like the centurion and his family, and they all got saved.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, I mean, like Ella said, it might not all be a genuine decision, but that's like their culture.
Okay.
Even if it's like not common in our culture.
Okay. What's the largest group conversion that you see in the New Testament? Largest number of people? You have 4 family conversions in Acts, but one of those is a much bigger group. It's Cornelius, because his family and friends, Peter gets there and the place is packed. Okay, now, Peter knows that the entire group has believed. How? Well, he says for them to be baptized, he says, who can forbid water that these should be baptized who have, so how does he know that they've all believed?
If I remember right, the Holy Spirit fell upon them, and did they speak in tongues?
They did. They did. They spoke in tongues. So he said, well, that's not fair. He's got an advantage because he can see, the clear evidence of the fact that these have all. What if he hadn't had that? What if the Spirit of God had not fallen on them that way, the way that it was supposedly just, yeah.
Well, Scripture never commands that the person who's baptizing someone else, make sure that the testimony is genuine, because you can't ultimately see other people's hearts.
Okay.
So if they've made a clear confession of faith, then I don't think we're we're the ones to judge anyway. Like, oh, do they actually believe? Do they not? Unless they've shown clear evidence.
Uh-huh.
They don't.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, we depend on a testimony, but we can't get behind the testimony into the heart and find out if this motive is right, or what's driving this. Yeah. Yeah. James?
That's one of the advantages of baptism. It's also when you do baptize an individual, you have an opportunity to kind of walk through what that means. And you're baptized with Christ in death and raised in resurrection. And so that shows a bit of individualism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they can kind of probably understand part of the responsibility of being baptized and what that signifies.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. That's important. It kind of harkens back to what Ella said at the beginning. Is a group decision as legitimate a decision as an individual decision would be? Or let me ask it this way. Does a group decision like the one that I'm presenting negate individual decision? Or is individual decision somehow connected to and part of the group decision? See, I don't think that we can mutually exclude those. To say that, well, because the chief is speaking for the tribe, then, that's just his word. That's his decision. Well, in that culture, it's not just his decision. Okay? And so I think we got to be careful that we don't assume that because he's saying that the individuals are not personally believing. Some of them may not be. But even in an individualistic culture, you can't be totally sure, right? If you're dealing one-on-one with a person, even then, as you said, we can't totally be sure. Yeah, this is something that's highly debated in collectivistic cultures, especially where tribal unity and tribal decision-making is the norm in that group. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're a missionary and the chief comes and says this to you, would you be comfortable saying to the chief, well, I need to go around and talk to each one in your tribe to make sure that they've really believed? I don't think that would be a good idea. Paul, you're shaking your head no. What would you be telling the chief if you did that?
I don't believe him. I don't think so. Because he's like their leader. And if what he says, you have to go with. But at the same time, you have to make sure that he's not just speaking just for himself.
Mm-hmm.
But for the people.
Yeah, and that's tricky. It's not hard to know. I think you would be showing disrespect for the chief. You said, well, thanks, but I do need to talk to each one. Yeah, this is interesting. I think the key, the foundation for this discussion has to be make sure that you have given the people a thorough explanation. You need to understand their religious background, their thinking, and you have to make sure that you have really given them opportunity to understand and absorb what you're saying. That's a subjective call. It just is. How long does that take? How much explaining has to be done? See? And so that's a challenge on a field like that. And it just takes a lot of prayer, a lot of good. Appreciate. Anybody else want to chime in, add something to that? Those are good thoughts. Yeah, Jules.
I feel like even if people in the group weren't saved originally,
Mm-hmm.
they could see the change in their leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would be like, "Oh, this is an actual I can actually see a change in them. I want that change too." And then they can actually convert or finally actually submit to what they're
Okay. Now in that case, you have people acting more individually and then others watching them, right? And then trying to decide. Yeah. The thing that is uncomfortable for us is here's a case where everybody's jumping in together. And so you don't have an opportunity for that. What they do have an opportunity to do is watch you. Okay, and learn from you. And then, and yeah. If you had opportunity in a case like that to involve other people from other tribes who've come to Christ, that would also be very, very helpful. Because now you've got someone that's from their neck of the woods who understands more of the thinking to help you out. Anyway, that's a really interesting question. The family is more a kinship model, a nucleus plus others who are part of your everyday life. In fact, even in the house of Cornelius in Acts chapter 10, It says they were family and friends, but it's almost like a household, scenario there. Remember when David told Ziba, who was it? Mephibosheth would eat at his table. Well, you're talking about a lot of people at that table. It's not just a table. It's probably a figurative term. Lots and lots. The household servants would have been considered part of that family as well. Yeah. Cooperation, vitally important. Okay, obviously we've talked about that before. The competitor instinct fails here. So what about tribal warfare? Isn't that competition? Yes, but we're talking about the context of a tribe. Okay, yes, there is. Within the tribe, social harmony is very important. One of the reasons that Jim Elliot and his friends were killed by the Rwanda Indians, Rwanda natives in Ecuador, is because the tribe believed that the incursion, the entrance of another culture into their culture would bring about disunity. It would create instability. So it wasn't just, in other words, I don't think it'd be right to say the reason they killed them is because they were servants of Jesus Christ. That is part of it, but there's a whole lot more going on there as well. These tribes, many of these tribes believe in the purity of their tribal existence, and anything that rocks the boat, that introduces element of conflict, has to be warded off. And that's part of the reason that this happened with these guys. Okay. However, this does not eliminate intertribal conflict, which we just said. Intertribal conflict is very common. All right. Is Africa really so corrupt? There's no consistent answer. Be cautious, but don't say everybody is a thief. And we talked about that last time, okay? There is less homogenization here than any other cluster. What is homogenization again? Something they do with milk? What is homogenization? Right. So what is homogenizing of milk? It basically eliminates what? What does homogenation do with milk? What's it eliminate? You guys didn't study this in science class. Homogenization eliminates the separation of the cream from the milk. Milk a cow, you watch the cream comes to the top, right? Why do you go to the store and buy a bottle of milk and the cream doesn't? Because whatever this homogenization process is, it has made everything the same. It has eliminated the separation. And that's what we're saying here. But notice, you might think that in the African cluster, there's homogenization. Okay, that's where we have to be careful that we don't stereotype Africans, right? I've asked Paul some questions about his situation. He says, no, that's not true where I'm from, That doesn't bother me. Oh no, my whole thesis here has just gone under. No, it's because there's more, but remember that is not true so much within the tribe. It's true more with the other tribes. Okay, so some do's and don'ts. Do ask about the health and well-being of family. How many times have we seen this in the clusters? How's your family? Tell me about your family. You can't go wrong there. And I can't think of any cluster in the world where asking about family would be considered an intrusion or offensive. I can go anywhere and I can say, tell me about your family. People love it because the family, remember, is a collectivistic, intimate unit anywhere in the world by God's design. So same thing is true here. Do allow people to introduce themselves in light of extended families. What we mean by that is people love to be identified by extension to other people who are better known. Oh yeah, I'm related to so-and-so. It's kind of like when somebody comes here to faith and he says, hi, glad to be here, I'm so-and-so's dad. I was a student here, I was known by my own name, but now I'm known by, my son or daughter who's studying here. It's the same thing is true. People like to be introduced identified in light of extended families, assuming that they're proud of their extended families. Do dress modestly, okay? Again, in most animistic type cultures, modest dress. Now you say, well, what about people that don't wear anything in certain cultures? Okay, there are religious, spiritual things that come into that, okay? But as a general rule, and is that true where you're from, Paul? Is dress, like people in public, does the dress tend to be modest?
It's changed. Long years, it depends on the colonization time. So since I grew up in 2000s, the kids today dress up in like the Westerners.
Okay. So there you have the influence of globalization, right? The Western incursion coming in, yeah. Which would not, even though that's true today, that would not speak of the root system of that culture. That would be something that's more modern, as you said. Good. Do be very careful about how you ask a loved one about a loved one who's passed away. Why? Why would it be important that you deal with that issue gently?
Because the African people go through a lot of trauma when someone dies, and reminding them of the dead person would kind of pull them back into remembering the person. Kind of, been to many villages where a person passed away, and you ask the name of the person, the family will start crying because they miss the person. They're not very sure who possibly, like for them, death is caused by something. It's either they got killed by witchcraft or they got killed. They don't view death as something normal. Like something must happen for that. So tell them like, how's your dead person? I mean, just asking them like your past brother or something like that. They would kind of like remind them like seeking for revenge of who did it to their brothers.
Interesting. So there's not so much emphasis on death by natural causes, but there's, a curse involved or some sort of spiritual influence that brought that about. Okay. Would it be fair to say that talking about the dead person might also be dangerous because that person may even be lingering in a spirit form and listening to what you're saying? Yeah. Something that we don't. Now, do we ever do that? Oh, yeah, I'm sure Mom is up there listening to us right now. She's probably laughing at us right now when she hears us say that, or Grandma or whoever, right? But we do that a little bit more, like really, we say that, but we do that, it's not the same. It's not as serious and real as it is to them. Okay, good. All right. Well, okay. Questions, comments that anybody has about the African culture? Obviously, we're talking about humongous, very diverse culture. A lot more to say. Paul, is there anything you want to add that we didn't say that you think would be interesting for us to know? Okay. Anybody? Well, let's just introduce the Arab culture before we're done for today. For many Americans, the Arab culture is the most unfamiliar one. The differences are huge. There's a lot we don't understand. And this probably is a very obvious question, but when did Americans begin paying attention to the Arab cultures and how they function and what they do? Yeah, we were aware of them before that. My introduction to Arab cultures actually came more through the NBA, because when I was a kid, a lot of NBA stars were beginning to change their names. They were converting to Islam and they were changing their names. And one of the most famous of all is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was Lou Alcindor when he played for UCLA. But by the time I grew up, he was already known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Who's another famous athlete who you know by his Arabic name rather than his American name, given name? Yeah, Muhammad Ali. Do you remember what his name was? Anybody know what his real name is? Cassius Clay. You ever hear that name before? That was his name. He was from the Clay family, but nobody knows him by that name. He's Muhammad Ali. Anybody else? Well, there's Akeem Abdul-Olajuwon. Can't remember who he played for, you guys. The Rockets? Okay. Yeah. And a host of others, right? That was my introduction. When I was growing up, the word Muslim wasn't even used. When we thought about that group, we used the word Moslem, M-O-S-L-E-M. And then I noticed a few years later that they were not using that word so much, and now they were using the word Muslim. And of course, it's all a transliteration anyway. It's just an attempt to be more accurate in the way you transliterate or translate, the word from Arabic. Okay, so it is one that we're unfamiliar with. Where's the cluster? Right there, smack dab in the middle. By the way, I do like that. One of the reasons I really like this atlas is because it puts the middle in the middle. The cradle of civilization, right? The beginning of the church. I mean, it's all right here. When Jesus comes back to reign someday, this will be center stage. So I like that. Okay. And Paul, you get to put Africa in the middle too. Pretty cool. Yeah. So there's how it looks. And again, the Muslim advance is the biggest reason why it looks the way it does today. A little closer up. And there are several students here at Faith who are looking at this part of the world as potential for future ministry. And this all falls into the famous 1040 window, right? Yep. Takes in a lot more than that. It actually goes up around, even catches Spain and comes back way over to the east. Yeah. Of all of these countries, which one would you say is the most radically Muslim in its practice? I know I'm switching gears from Arab to Muslim. Which one would be the strongest? We've talked about this when we talk about social norms, tight and loose. Which is the tightest?
Would it be Saudi Arabia?
Yep, Saudi Arabia. Right. Exactly. Jordan is the old Edom, Moab, and Ammon that we read about in the Bible. In fact, prophetically, Daniel chapter 11 says that during the tribulation, the Antichrist, for some unstated reason, will not be able to take the people of Edom, Ammon, and Moab, which is pretty much modern-day Jordan. And Jordan would be one of the friendliest to the west, to Israel and to the west among these nations. So there's some interesting thinking there when it comes to eschatology and how that's all going to play out. Fascinating. And look at here, right in the middle of all this, there's Israel. Yeah, where do we put it? And I think we put it in the right place, but because it's definitely not Arab. Although you've got the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, but okay, Cyprus is kind of half and half. Part of Cyprus is Muslim, the other part would be there are a lot of Eastern Orthodox there. So there is a mix. Which of these are mentioned in the Bible? Yep, Egypt is definitely, one of the most ancient cultures. What other ones? Where? Syria, right? Ben-Hadad and all those guys, What else? Yep. Oh, yeah. Who said that? Cyprus. Who was from Cyprus, famous in the Bible, New Testament? Early Christian? Barnabas. Oh, sorry, I thought Barnabas from Cyprus. And who started the church in Antioch? Unnamed men from Cyprus and Cyrene, which is over here in Libya. Or is it Tunisia? Oh, dear. Oh, maybe it's modern-day Tunisia. Council of Carthage, famous church council, North Africa. There's a lot that went on here. What else is mentioned in the Bible? Well, obviously Israel, Jordan, Edom, Moab, and Ammon. Okay. Iraq would be what? What would have been the word used to describe that area? That's where Babylon was, right? That whole Babylonian Empire. Yep. Iran's the old Persia, although that's in a different. So, okay, yeah, interesting. Oh, the Queen of Sheba. Some think, let me just go back here, some think that Sheba was down from this region somewhere. We're not totally sure. Okay. All right, let's begin with a few notable characteristics of Arab culture. First, it's a more cultural identity than an ethnic heritage. So if I say the word Arab, I'm not necessarily referring to the color of one's skin or those things so much. It is more of a cultural identity because within this cluster there is a lot of variation. Okay. The dominant language is Arabic, which, by the way, is one of the most beautiful languages. You look at the Arabic language, it is, if any of you like calligraphy, there's a challenge for you writing in Arabic. It's a beautiful. Being an Arab and speaking Arabic are usually synonymous. 60% of the world's oil is there. That's a big deal. A lot of people thought that by now, 2023, oil wouldn't even be a thing anymore. Back when I was growing up, everybody was talking about nuclear power, and they still do, but a lot of people thought that it wouldn't be long before oil would be a thing of the past. Okay, but it doesn't look like oil is going away anytime soon. It's still a huge, and many people think that oil is actually going to be a big player in the future during the tribulation period, and vying for position and all that is going to involve nations that have oil. Modern cities mingle among ancient ones. Yeah. Give me one of the most modern cities you'll find in this cluster. Pardon? Dubai. Yeah. Kristen's been there. I don't know who else from Faith might have. Anybody been to that? Has anybody been to this cluster before? I've never been there. I've been to Israel, but Israel's not in this cluster. Actually, though when we went to Bethlehem, technically we were in an Arab, Muslim cluster there, or section. Yeah. Arabs are vibrant people with a strong sense of loyalty for family and close friends. Family is key. Again, we've said that many times, but in the Arab cluster, it is especially. Why is it that you hear about people coming to Christ and then all of a sudden they disappear? Is it because the family hates them? No, look, don't draw the wrong conclusion. Don't think that the reason that someone who is okay, excuse me, I said Arab. I got to be very careful because Arab and Muslim are not synonymous. Okay, what's the largest Muslim country in the world? Indonesia, and yet it's not primarily an Arab world. So I have to be careful about this. But when people come to Christ in the Muslim culture, and most Muslims are not Arab because, well, maybe they are, even though Indonesia is the biggest one. I don't have the numbers for that. But it's not so much because they hate the person, but because they have done such a dishonor to the family, have shamed the family, that something has to be done to remove the shame. And as much as they hate to kill their own son or daughter, they have to do it in order to remove the horrible shame that has come over the family. Do it in cold blood, and murder's murder, but understand that there's more behind it than what meets the eye. Real quick, the Arab family, okay? Honor and respect, and of course we've said that so many times, in the family must be, I think there's a typo, I think it's just honor and respect in the family must be maintained at all cost, okay? And that's what we're talking about. You dishonor the family, you have to figure out how to resolve that. And of course, plan A is get the person who converted to renounce this new religion and come back. Okay, and when it becomes evident to the family that that is not going to happen, then you have to take the next step. Arabs are patriarchal. The father is responsible for the family's well-being. The children are loyal. Patriarchal family. The larger the family, the better economically and in terms of prestige. And that's true in other cultures as well. Big families, communicate influence, power, economic wealth, because these children go out and they get jobs, and so there's a lot packed into that. Male offspring are more important. Oh, sorry, ladies. But a son can bring honor, but a daughter can bring shame. Now they say that's not fair, and guess what? You're right. It's not. Okay. Now, here's a question that I would ask, and I'm not sure how to answer this, okay? Is there a way that a daughter can bring honor to a family in the Arab world? And you live, are there quite a few Arabs even where you live?
Congo,
Not in the Congo. Yeah, you've got to go farther north.
we got more Indian people than
Got more what?
India.
Okay. Okay. But with the effect of globalization, that has changed, to some degree. But again, when we talk about globalization, we're not talking about the root system of the cluster, of the culture. All right, let me see. Where are we here? Okay, one more and we'll stop. The family and business are often integrated. It's very, very common in that cluster for the father to, sons to work for the father, and then he passes on the business. And part of that's the idea of the patriarchal cluster where the father influences the children, even to the point of what they become when they grow up. All right. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it. Off to chapel we go.